Kala, welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast.
Hey, Robbie, great to be here. Great to see you after
Yeah,
such a long time.
yeah. We were just
Right?
talking. We just kind of had off air the conversation about. We just had a lovely conversation, in fact. And then I kept bemoaning the fact that we hadn't already started the show properly. But we were saying, we met at a part of the really nice conversation we just had was a reflection
Yeah,
on the first conversation we had, which was a really beautiful Robert Holden 3-day event, Coach Camp,
yeah,
which for anyone who's listening,
yeah,
really recommend. Super cool. Robert Holden is a lovely, deep
yeah,
man, and I was saying to you, I'm going to do some work with him next year on one of his masterminds, and excited about that. And his Coach Camp is cool because
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
he just brought all I can't remember what it was, like the nine different parts of his work. Or maybe not that many. They're like the
yeah,
eight. Like, what would it be? Like maybe the 18 bits of his work. It's like a lot because it's like 3 days
yeah,
of
yeah.
of
It
2-hour
was. Yeah,
workshops on each. So like a bit on his bit about love, a bit on his
yeah,
bit about success, and it was so good.
yeah,
And one of them,
yeah.
my favorite moments,
It was brilliant.
I was saying in a
Yeah.
message to you, was we had this beautiful conversation at the end of the first day, and
Yes.
yeah, it
Yeah.
feels like, particularly because of what's happened in the world since then, it feels like a really
Oh,
long time ago.
yeah.
But it's lovely
It
to be here
does.
with you again.
Thank you, Robbie. It's lovely to be here with you too. And you're right. It's so this year for me has absolutely flown by, and that probably is the reason why it feels a lot longer than it probably was when we did last meet. But yeah, it does feel an age ago.
Yeah, and we're recording, when are we? October, and obviously usually I record
Yeah,
these a couple of months before they come out, so people won't be hearing it for a little while. But
yeah,
the year we're talking about, of course, is 2020. Like,
yes,
so, and I mean, as much or as little as you want to say about this, but I guess it's interesting to be
mm,
reflecting while in the middle of this on how this strange,
yeah,
incredibly unusual, unprecedented thing in the modern age, at least, has
mm,
happened in the world,
mm,
and what effect that has had on, I'm curious about what effect that's had on you,
yeah,
both as a person and, of course, in the work you do. And we'll get into exactly the work you do.
yeah,
You could start telling us now, but
yeah,
we'll
yeah.
get more into that later. But yeah, what's it been like this year? How's it been for you?
Wow, really, really interesting. Surprising. The first week of lockdown, when we had that lockdown back in March, I think it was right at the beginning of March, it was very bizarre. It was like, when it snows at Christmas and New Year and the whole world stops in January, it was a bit like that. Everything had just stopped, but only there was no snow outside. And so everything was just like on suspended animation. And I did not know what was happening, as in which way things were going to go. And people around me were very, it was a combination. Some people were worried, some people were just like, great, it feels like a bit of an extended holiday. So it was just like a bizarre uncertainty, because you had all this kaleidoscope of emotions and feelings, that people were going through. And then I started hearing how lots of people's work and client base had imploded, and I thought, oh, right, okay, that I wasn't sure whether to be concerned or not, or how that would impact me. I mean, a percentage of my work is actually online anyway, so that bit was slightly reassuring. That I thought, well, there are some things that probably won't change, and if they do, they do. But about, I guess, 60-70% of my work, which was face-to-face or in-person delivery, that was then thrown in the air like a deck of cards, but they were suspended in the air. They hadn't actually fallen anywhere. So I thought, oh, right. And then about 3 or 4 weeks later, it started to just go crazy. And I have never been as busy for over a decade.
Wow.
It's absolutely mad. And I think the other thing I've noticed is probably the reason why it's feeling so busy is because you're not traveling, you're not spending time weaving in travel time from one meeting to another, or going from one location to another. You're just like completely on it. So the thing that I've learned about me is I've had to walk my talk in terms of making sure I've created enough pockets of space, windows in between client sessions, so that I've got, breakout sessions, break state sessions, uh, just paying attention to your energy and actually making sure that there's enough time to replenish that energy, because for about 4 weeks it was literally back to back, and you were starting early, finishing quite late. All of a sudden there was another 48 hours that you found, or you were adding to a very busy working week anyway. So that was quite crazy. I don't know, how did you find it?
Yeah, well, it's just making me think. It's just some like, unexpected
Mm,
things, really. Like, I just think I hadn't. So I quite like working at home. I like
yeah,
working like by myself. It's actually an
yeah,
improvement on my work from home because I've got Emma here now. So that's like
yeah,
really
yeah.
nice.
That's
And
nice. Yeah,
I mostly just work online. So the so
yeah,
the, the practical changes to my work didn't look that big.
yeah,
But the impact on me, like I suddenly realized after like a few weeks of it, like I realized I had to get out to the
yeah,
park, to the river, somewhere, which
yeah,
was just taken care of by weekend trips or
yeah,
social things, or the kind
yeah,
of, probably for me, the like 10-15% of my work that was in personal face to face. Like those things
yeah,
would give me something that I didn't realize I was missing. And when that really
yeah.
hit me was the first time we really went away somewhere. Like once the
Mhm.
lockdown had been released a little bit, we went
Yeah,
to visit my sister-in-law and brother-in-law and nephew. And it was just like we were sat in the garden and we were doing it in a socially distanced way,
yeah,
and all that kind of thing. But I
yeah,
was just like, I just had this realization so strong that I had to say it out loud. It was like,
yeah,
oh wow, I just feel so good to see you and to be here and to be
yeah,
somewhere different. And so I think
yeah,
that's one of the things that definitely, yeah, I've learned from all this.
yeah. That's interesting you should say that, because I would echo that in terms of, you don't really appreciate, when you saw your family and your loved ones as much as we do now, because
Yeah,
that you can't. My parents, I grew up in Loughborough. My parents and my brother are there. We're quite a close family. And as soon as this happened, we couldn't see them. It took us 6 months, 6 months to actually see them. And
yeah.
Zoom's not great for
It's
things.
not. It's not the same.
No. But when we first saw them, it was heartbreaking because we had to see them from, across the road, with masks on. And then, yeah, that is very, very strange. It's like, you couldn't write this stuff really, could you?
It's absolutely amazing. And,
Yeah.
there's these strange kind of things. And I know different people will play with, I think one of the interesting things about this situation from a kind of
Mm.
human science or looking at the world point of view,
Yeah.
is it's been a game since the rules got relaxed after that initial lockdown. The
Yeah.
whole thing has been a really interesting risk negotiation a lot of the time, is how I
Yeah.
realized I've come to see it. It's like, including when we went to see, Catherine and James and Theo, that first visit, it's
Yeah.
like, okay, what are we comfortable with doing in terms
Yeah.
of staying or visiting or
Yeah.
inside or outside? What are they comfortable with?
Yeah.
We've got some extra things we need to think about because of our situation. So have they. How do
Yeah.
we all manage that? Then the same conversation, Emma's mum and dad live near there. So it's like
Yeah.
the same kind of thing with them, working it out, even with friends who I might meet socially distanced, around here. Now
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I'm happy to go for a walk or to sit in a pub right now. Are you though? And it's okay if you're not, because
Yeah.
we don't know with everyone what
Yeah.
who they are going to be in contact with, how vulnerable they might be. It's one thing for me to put myself at risk of catching
So
the
true.
virus as a 30 something person, but it's
Yeah.
a different if my friend has to visit her
Mm.
aunt who is for whatever reason vulnerable. So you get all these interesting conversations,
Yeah.
but it is this strange thing with humans, isn't it, where we're getting to a
Yeah.
kind of like, it's normal to not hug people when I see them now,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I
Absolutely.
didn't think would happen to me, but has
Yeah.
definitely happened.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? We're a lot more conscious. I think a lot of what I've noticed, and certainly that's what I've learned about myself. You're a lot more aware of how you are physically, where you're standing, what you're doing. Than you before. Didn't really need to pay much attention to that. But you're consciously a lot aware of, okay, is there enough distance?
Absolutely.
But the online stuff is fine. You know, what I've found after getting over the Zoom fatigue of the back-to-back meetings, you know, managing energy has been quite helpful, quite resourceful, because I find it easier to be attentive, or it has been quite, being in the moment hasn't been as challenging as I thought it might.
Yeah, I think like when I started doing more work online with clients, I kind of noticed quite quickly there's some real advantages to it. You know, and one of them is both of you can really manage the space.
Yeah.
Without you having, we can both be in, and we can do it for this as well, like to a certain extent, we can both be in like the perfect space for us for this conversation.
Yes.
Even if for both of us, that's quite a different space. And,
Yeah.
you know, when doing one-on-one work in person with people, unless I'm going to their workplace,
Yeah.
it's like, I've never found, I don't know if you have actually in London, a place which is like perfect. And so it's either a kind of slightly dull, like kind of therapy room somewhere, or it's somewhere that's like a bit too public, which for some work is just not appropriate. But if it's the therapy room, that's also quite intense for people who aren't used to having an intense conversation with a stranger. To then take that into a private room, that's a different thing. And what I really like about meeting people, especially clients for the first time actually online, is they can be somewhere they're totally comfortable. I can be somewhere different. We can both be private in that place. And that often does, I think you're right, lead to a different kind of, or in some ways an easier presence. I don't know what what do you think about that? And also, have you ever found the perfect place to meet clients in London? Like, that's the other thing that I should ask you at this point. Still on the lookout for it.
We're on the lookout for it. I think I haven't really thought about, is this a perfect place? I think for me, if it's a perfect place, if the client is in a comfortable place, because I'm more interested in paying attention to the client and how the client is responding in the moment, than I am about the space. So, you know, when you've been doing this for a couple of decades, you know, you encounter all sorts of spaces, including the noisy ones. The perfect place is not the noisy places, because when you can't actually hear your client because the noise in the background, particularly noisy coffee shops, is drowning out what they're saying, that's really kind of like challenging, because you don't want to keep saying, sorry, what was that you just said, particularly when you're trying to be in the moment. So you have to become quite good at lip reading as well. But so as long as it's not too noisy, then it's really how is the client in that space, and how can I then hold that space and create that space with the client, for the client. But the walking as well, what kind of coaching are you doing? You know, walking coaching is actually quite good in London, because there's so many different places you can actually walk and coach as well. So that's quite, particularly the green spaces that you have in London. And I've also been quite lucky to be able to work from clients' offices. So they have meeting rooms. A lot of my clients have, their own access to their own meeting rooms. And a lot of them are great. They've got all the technology that you need, whiteboards and flip charts, and the space to get up and walk around. So that they've been really, really helpful, particularly for team coaching. When you're team coaching, that kind of space is really helpful, really resourceful. And so I have done team coaching online, but I do find I enjoy the physical in-person team coaching a lot more than the online version. However, it does work online as well. It's just different because you have to appreciate the lag, the sound quality, and it's how do you make the space, so making sure everybody's voice is in the room. So
yeah, and there's something, isn't there, that I think we've learned about Zoom or any other online platform in the last 6 months around, like my friend of a friend put it really nicely. He said he really loves what do you say? Like, I really love catching up with my friends on Zoom, and it's fun because I'm getting to see friends that I wouldn't be able to meet in person. And I really miss the spontaneity of a conversation around a table in a pub. as an
Yes.
example. And I think it's
Yeah.
exactly the same. I think it's the same thing you're talking about. It's like there's
Yeah.
just a way that we don't, I don't think most people were conscious of, that
Yeah.
we don't. Humans are able to manage the connections between a group of people
Yes.
in a really dynamic way. Like not all of us, and not all of us
Yeah.
all the time, and not all of us perfectly, but we are able to do that in a way that you just can't do online. And that includes being able to choose the moment to have the conversation across the table in the pub,
Exactly.
which you just can't do when there's 7 of you on Zoom. And
No.
it's the same, I think, with a team
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
It's like, or a group of people, you can do a lot of, and what I do quite a lot of when I'm working with groups is you can do a lot of beautiful, like one-to-one work in the group, which everyone is present for and learn from. But it's a different thing, I think, to dynamically be with a whole group at the same time.
Exactly. So, you can't have those cross conversations or those little pockets, because people can't talk at the same time, really. So that way, it's how do you create that atmosphere that is going to be as close to having a similar kind of atmosphere, physically, and other than having breakout rooms, you've got to find a way of making sure everybody's voice is in that room. But the one-to-one stuff is exactly what you said. You can really hold that space, and there aren't any distractions for both you or the client, the coachee, and I think you get more out of it. There's a lot more to pay attention to, and you do have to work hard, because you've got, how do you look at the lens, look at the person? So it's that balance, isn't it? So there's a lot more to pay attention to, but at the same time, I found it a lot more easier to do. I've just adapted to it, but I seem to get more out of it. Pick more up, the things that don't get said, the non-verbal cues, all that kind of stuff. So long as there's no lag, then I find I pick up more online.
Yeah, and just to say, this is like not for you, but just for people who are listening in, because I think it's an insight, a realization that I had like really early on when I started working online, was just that there's some good contracting around online that I think was just, as soon as I had that, I can't remember if I learned it from someone. I think I just kind of had the thought myself after some bad online coaching experiences where there was a lag, there were problems. It's just like, for me, I have like 3 backups. In fact, the same is true for this call, like not quite 3, because recording's a bit tricky, but if I'm coaching, if it's going wrong, like we can cut the videos and we can do it just audio. Like that's better than having both of us worry about. It's like what you said about the coffee shop where it's too loud. If you can't focus on the person because something's going wrong with the technology, fix that. Like don't suffer in silence. And the same for the client. And I would always be ready to phone them. I've always got, I can always, even international clients, like you can phone them via Skype. It works. It's good. It's more reliable than the problems with the lags and that kind of thing. And I think having that stuff in place is really important. It can't be said enough, especially when we're all doing this. Kala, you've like given us so many beautiful places that we could jump off on from that. And if possible, I want to get back to at some point team coaching, because I think there's some really, it's like it's like a phrase that a lot of people say and different people mean slightly different things by. And I'd just love to hear about you and how you do that, but probably later in the conversation, because I think I know about this, and I think it's useful for listeners probably, and people who are watching, to get a feel for how you came to this. Like you said, you've been coaching for decades. It's like you're not new to this kind of work, and we'll start with that way that I often start in these interviews, which is like, when did you first come across coaching?
When I first came across coaching was probably, I'm not even aware of that it was coaching, was the environment that I grew up in. My father always said, "You're very philosophical." If this was from the age of 4, you were always very philosophical. And I said, "Well, what does that mean?" He said, "Well, you always ask so many questions." And I think, it's interesting because my mum used to get irritated. you ask too many questions, ask too many. And my father would actually say, "No, never be shy of asking questions. It's really good to, it's good that you're more interested in asking questions than telling people how the world works." So I've always had that childlike curiosity. I kind of must have been born with it because I never grew out of it.
Yeah, it sounds also though, Carla, like that thing that might have been natural in you was also encouraged in you. It's like it's perfectly natural, and for people, I don't think actually people have been able to see it on the video because it was probably
Yeah,
focused on you at the time.
yeah,
But when you were saying your mom used to like get a bit annoyed, like my expression said, yeah, that's understandable, because when kids ask you loads of questions and you're trying to do things,
yeah,
it can be a bit annoying.
yeah.
But it sounds like your dad or your father really just encouraged that in you and invited you to be curious and keep that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I take my hat off to him even now. He'd be like, when I've asked him questions over the years about times when I've been through some pretty challenging moments and traumatic moments in life, when I've turned to him and said, Dad, I don't know what to do. And he would turn it around on me. Just, what you've got it in you. Ask those questions. What would you be asking a client? What would you be asking me? And so he would flip that around. So actually, unbeknownst to him, coaching is not his profession, but he did it naturally.
Yeah. Where do you think he got it from? Was it natural? And did he practice it in his work? What was his work?
No, he was a chartered accountant for a
Okay.
pharmaceutical company. So no, quite the contrary. He wasn't trained as a coach at all. But I think he was held as a trusted advisor. He was people would refer to him as counsel for many things. He was a pillar of the community, pillar of society, very well trusted. And that was in the family as well. He was the youngest of four. And he was the most educated, and so cousins and aunts and uncles, they all went running to him for counsel. So that's probably why he was naturally like that without even realizing that he was like that.
Yeah, but it's so nice to have both the sense of curiosity and the encouragement of that, and the sense like you've got it in you. And in some ways, if we were to say to a new coach, just believe that the person has got it in them and ask and be curious, like that'd be a great starter for somebody who was coaching.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when did you? That was in you since the start, and it's really beautiful to hear. Like I've got a big smile on my face about it. It just sounds so nice, really, and to hear that bit about your father as well.
Yeah.
When did you first hear about the coaching as we are now talking about it, like the concept or the profession, like this whole weird, slightly odd thing that we do?
Well, I was actually, I put myself on a training course, and that training course, I met somebody who they said, you'd be really good as a counsellor, as a psychotherapist. And I said, oh, why? They said, because you've just got such a wonderful way of putting people at ease, and it's easy to talk to you, and it's easy to trust you. I thought, but I don't know anything about counselling. And then they recommended me they said, go and have a conversation with this person. So I had a conversation, and they were running a Relate trained counselling course. At the time, I was actually in the business profession, running a career development, career representation company, helping people, get promoted or find new work, find new jobs for the executive sort of leadership level and upwards. And so this was kind of different, but it actually wasn't different. It was just complete. Little did I realize that it was going to complement my profession. So I embarked on a Relate trained counselling course, and it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And I only did it because people kept saying, you'd be great at this. So I thought, well, let's see what it's about. And I love learning, absolutely love. I'm a bit of a learning junkie. And the tutor, I passed. It was a diploma, and I passed level. We went to 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I got up to level 4 within that time. So I was training part-time as well as working, running my own show. And the tutor said, you would be brilliant at coaching.
Huh.
And that's the first time I heard. And I said, well, what is it? And he said, you just do it naturally. He said, I've seen the way you are with the rest of the group. He said, the way you held the space, in the group sessions, and he said, he said, you just do it naturally. He said, you should look into it. And that's how I first got into it, and how I first heard of it. Many moons ago.
Yeah, like roughly when is this, and how far into your career are you at this point?
So this would have been in the early 90s.
Yeah, so early, like for coaching in the UK, at least, as I understand it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was been 93, 94. And that was when I first came across it. And then again, I was still quite entrenched in my work, in my business, but did more and more of it. Just didn't realize how much I was weaving, coaching into the way in which I was working. And it also complemented the business and the results that I was getting. And then at the same time, I actually then kept in touch with that tutor. The tutor became my mentor for probably about 4 years. As I then got into TA, transactional analysis. So he was great of saying, you should try this, you should try that, that'd be good. And books as well, he'd recommend, all sorts of things. So he would recommend things that would complement, he thought would complement, what I was doing and the way in which I worked. And it did.
Yeah. And what's his name? I was going to say, what's his name?
Will Roberts.
Will Roberts. Yeah, it sounds like Will really, both at first.
Yeah.
And isn't it interesting that someone said you should try counselling, and it just like pinged that little thing that then must have touched something, because it took, you went far enough down that road to do the late course, and then again Will kind of pinged the coaching, and then kept pointing you at things. And
absolutely,
what a skill that is that he must have, because it sounds like he kept getting it right, and it was really useful.
Absolutely. And but the other thing was that was really, really interesting, on looking back now that you've asked me this question, is that every course I did, for example, when I went to Nottingham and did the TA, the Kegworth, and did the TA course, the tutors there said, you'd be really good at coaching. Have you tried this? Have you tried that? And you're natural at it. So I kept getting these messages from different places. And at the time, that wasn't really my profession. My profession was the career management consultancy. And the coaching was just something that complemented the way in which I worked, because it was getting fantastic results. So that's why I thought, well, it's working very well in the way in which I'm working.
Yeah, and you were probably like pioneering that in some ways, because I think now if you were probably running a career management company, people would be knowingly and explicitly doing that, because they would know that using the coaching skills, especially in an early part of that process, to really understand the person and to really support them to make the decisions and move in the right direction is a really powerful technology to do that. But I'm not surprised that it kind of fitted in naturally and got you good business results too.
It did, because you see, the coaching training and the counselling training that I was receiving, we were also able to add new services to the business. So we were offering onboarding and inboarding provisions, the first 90 days and all of that. And that was way back in the late 90s. And so, and when it as it grew in popularity, you think, all right, okay, everybody else is doing it now.
Yeah. And so what training did you do back then? Because there wouldn't, some of the training places that people know these days wouldn't have been in operation in the mid 90s. So what coaching training was around, and what was it that you did?
I did a combination of things. I also embarked on becoming a practitioner for interpreting the psychometric reports, the level A, level B, because I was coming across that in the career management with clients. And so this is something that I thought, okay, we need to add this as a service as well, and a tool. So I embarked on that. And I first came across somebody who did a talk. I went to a talk through business, through work. And that was way back when Savile and Holsworth were around. I say quite a while ago, and because I know that they split up and created new tools. So, but that's the first thing that I came across, a psychometric assessment tool. And up until that moment, I was against psychometric testing or assessments, not testing, sorry, assessments, because I used to think, well, I am not a number and you're not going to put me in a box. So for me, I kind of used to, I was quite, and probably more anti than I realized, because I didn't want to be put in a box, and I didn't want to put labels on people and put them in boxes. So this is why my ignorance, sorry, way back then, it was a long time ago, kind of made me think, no, it's not something I want to do. And then,
But I think, just to say, I think that you're not alone in that. I think it's like a natural, in some ways, quite at least in our culture, still now,
yeah,
it's quite a natural reaction to those
yeah,
kinds of things. It's like, how is I mean, it's how is like a 40-minute
yeah,
test gonna get a handle on me as a complex human? Is a
yeah,
fairly
yeah,
reasonable thing, and like not
yeah,
wanting to put people into
yeah,
boxes. And
yeah.
so but it sounds like what you're saying, it sounds like the end of the story is, and now you believe in them or use them or have done in and seen value in them. So
Yeah.
what shifted, and when do you think they are really useful for people?
So I mean, at the time, I embarked on them because it was a requirement with some of the clients, some of the big organisations that I was working with. So I thought, okay, great. Well, we need to add this. Let's go and find some more about it. And I kind of thought there's more to this. So the more research I did, the more I thought, well, I want to see how they do it and how that tool works. And so I wanted a combination of tools. I didn't want to be wedded to just one. And the more I researched it, and when you go through level 1, level 2 qualification, AMB, you actually learn about all the different modalities and all the different tools that exist and where they came from and all that. So, and that was fascinating. I thought, oh, okay, this is quite interesting, because a lot of that weaves into some of the coaching training that I've had as well. So I'm not wedded to any particular tool as such, but there is, so if you use them sensibly to guide and inform, they can be quite useful. But people are different. We're changing all the time, and you have to bear that in mind. Where were they when they were answering the questionnaire? What mindset were they in when they were answering the questionnaire? Where was their energy levels? What was their motivation? What was their where were they in their lives? Because when we go through different life experiences, I think that also, will have an impact on where the needle goes in some of these assessments. And you've got the trait-based ones and behavioral ones. It's the behavioral ones that I'm more interested in than the trait-based ones. But again, I still haven't shaken off the I am not a number and therefore you're not going to put me in a box. I still feel like that, and I still respect that, and I think that lends itself really well for when you're working with other people, because it's this unconditional positive regard that you have for everyone in every interaction, whether it's a coaching or mentoring interaction or just a casual interaction. So
Yeah, and for me, it's always, they're like, if they can help people see things about themselves or the way they interact with the world that they hadn't seen before, then
yeah,
that's really amazing. And if
yeah,
they just make people feel like they're being put, I mean, that's quite an interesting topic for a coaching conversation. Like,
yeah,
why are you so stressed out about this test? But they
yeah,
often can do that. And usually when I've done different ones with people or supported people to
yeah,
look at different ones,
yeah,
it's like the moments that feel valuable are like, this
yeah,
sentence here, the rest of it can get lost, but this sentence here, that gets me. And then
yes,
suddenly they've got
yeah,
that thing which they didn't have before, and it can be really valuable.
absolutely. And that's exactly what how it should be used, really, because it's how you interpret it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like, it's so interesting, Carla, just to hear. I think, anyone who's listening to this has just heard your curiosity still there, right? Because that's,
Yeah,
or still there at this stage in the journey. It's just like, yeah,
yeah,
it's got a bit interested in the psychometrics, and then I kind of kept getting interested. It's like, what are they saying? What are they saying? Really,
yeah,
really beautiful.
yeah,
Like, to pick up your story, what then? So it's, first of all, coaching came along, and then the
yeah,
psychometrics came along, and this learning you were doing was alongside and complementary
yeah,
the business you'd been working in or running before.
yeah,
And it kind of started to, it sounds like put its roots into the new things you were creating, like the onboarding and that kind of thing.
yes.
And then what happened as you gradually, because as far as I understand it, you now it's there's a whole variety of things you do, but it's
Yeah.
not that company anymore. It's
No.
new work and different work. So how did
Yeah.
that transition happen, and what were the kind of key moments in that?
The key, probably, well, after that, I embarked on NLP, fell in love with NLP, and just went through, because it's quite immersive, and I did it in quite an immersive way. And to the point that I did master practitioner as well for business. It was NLP for leadership, NLP for business. So again, I initially embarked on that qualification, that training to support my work, but it kind of took me in this other direction.
And just for people who don't know NLP well, or like have got this like awareness of it, like what do you love most about that? What about it kept drawing your curiosity on so that you got all the way to master practitioner?
Well, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. It was understanding how people think. It was, it was a very useful way to support my curiosity. It helped me to understand, why being curious is useful when you use it in the context of understanding people. So it kind of opened that up more. I think, oh, okay, that's interesting. Oh, that's it. But also it made me a lot more self-aware of how I am and how am I showing up. And that was really, really interesting. And then I was given the opportunity to embark on a master's program, a master's qualification at Ashridge Business School for executive coaching, mentoring, consulting. And I just thought, wow,
How did that come about? You said you were given the opportunity?
I was given the opportunity. Well, somebody recommended me to them, and they recommended them to me, and I thought, oh, I don't know, not it's Ashridge, of all places. I'm not sure I'm good enough. And then I had a meeting with them, conversation interview, and they said, you're exactly the type of person we want on this program. This is when they first kicked. I was on one of their first cohorts of when they released the executive masters there, and it was a 5-year masters that I chose to do in 2 years, and I met some fantastic industry giants, absolutely amazing, and it was like doing masters on steroids. Absolutely, it was. And I if anybody's serious about coaching, I definitely recommend that one. Not necessarily recommend do it in 2 years. I mean, I had to, because I had a young family then, and I thought, if I don't do it now, within that condensed time, it's just not going to happen, because family grow up and they take over. So yeah, it was an interesting time, because my husband then was also he went through a double pneumothorax. So I was looking after him, running a business, bringing up my two younger children, my 2 boys. And so it was really an intense time. Looking back now, I have no clue how I held it all together, but I did. And that was the life changer for me. I learned so much during that. It kind of consolidated my learning. It consolidated how to apply it to my work, how to apply it professionally and properly. And you learn so much about yourself. I came out quite a different person. So that's probably going to been the most significant life-changing moment for me, as well as having children, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, there's just to kind of capture that, because I actually, weirdly, I don't know that much about Ashridge, except I know a woman called Eve Poole quite well, and she used to work at Ashridge, and so I know, because I know her, that was how I first came across it. I think it was like, wow, she was an amazing leadership teacher, trainer, coach, all those kind of things. And it's like, wow, if she works there, that must be an amazing place, right? Full of high quality people. And But for you particularly in this experience, there were kind of 2 things you mentioned there that sounded like they might have been really important parts of that. Meeting industry giants and getting to connect with those kinds of people, but also coming out with the real knowledge of how to apply your work and how to apply it professionally. So what were the things that came out of that program? What were the parts of it or the things you took away from it that have made the most difference?
Wow. It's kind of like the gift that keeps on giving. Every day, it was, I guess, understanding that there's just so much more to learn. And that's the biggest thing that came out of it with me, is that I thought, well, I've got this master's, I've learned so much, but I've also, what I see, it opens up your world, and you just think, oh my God, there's just a sea of things to learn out there. There's just so much, and you just feel like, I thought I'd come out feeling, so if it's, say you've got a pie and you do this qualification and you come out with a master's and think, great, most of my pie is going to be filled in. But no, you come out feeling, well, I did that, oh my God, I only know like literally a fraction of what there is to know and to learn and to develop. So that it was quite humbling in many respects. So you don't come out, well, I didn't come out feeling like, well, I'm the expert now, I've got a master's. No, quite the opposite. You come out feeling, right, okay, what's next? There's just so much that I need to pay attention to. Have I got this right? Have I got that right? How am I here? How am I being of service? Have I understood? You become more reflective. So I guess that was the biggest thing for me, learning how to become more reflective. Oh, and the other thing was, because you have to pass every single module in order to be allowed to continue doing the course, to get to the end of it. And there's quite a bit, and the bit that I really had to battle with, which I didn't realize, which it was giving myself permission to ask deep and really deep dive challenging questions, and not to be afraid of going into like a deeper inquiry. It wasn't about being nice. It's okay to challenge, and it's all okay to have that deeper under the skin, get under the bonnet inquiry. And so that was a bit of a wow moment for me.
Yeah,
learning how to do that.
Yeah, wow. It sounds like it was a amazing learning opportunity, especially for someone like you with all that curiosity.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that sense of just learning all the stuff that there is still to learn about must have
Oh,
been
yeah.
both. Like, it sounds like it was, I imagine for you, it was both. I mean, the way you said it was kind of like, wow, the pie is actually massive. What kind of overwhelming, but also exciting, because it's like, oh wow, there's all these
Yeah.
directions
Yeah.
I can take the learning now. Carla, I'm curious. So then, this was it after that then that your work started to become more like how it looks now, or was this always been a gradual process over many years? What happened after you'd had that? I think you described it as a life changer with Ashridge.
Well, yeah, after Ashridge, because that gave me lots to think about in terms of, to stand up to certain things, including things that were not going very well back at home. And because I had Professor Bill Critchley, Charlotte Sills, Eric Tahan, these are the people that we were in the room with, learning and going through all the things that we learned. And so this is what I mean by industry giants, and having direct exposure to all these people. On the one hand, it was humbling, but on the other hand, it was quite scary about how can I stand up to some of the things that I need to, I guess, challenge in my own life. So yeah, at the time, having finished the masters, what I hadn't realized was just how much my ex-husband, for example, wasn't keen on me doing it or completing it. I wasn't aware of that, and I thought, I just need to finish it. I just need to complete it. And actually, my friends and my family were fantastic. They said, no, you need to complete it. You wanted to do this. You're really, really good at this. You've just got to complete it. And so I did complete it, and it as I say, it did help. But at the same time, there was some very challenging, traumatic things going on at home, which at the time was horrible. I wouldn't wish it upon anyone. But when you come out of it, what I realized is that actually, that adversity has added further strength and insight, because what I found, even while I was going through it, that if in my coaching, I could actually relate to other people's comedies and tragedies. I could really kind of go, okay, I can appreciate how that person might be feeling or thinking. So it takes your listening, your appreciative inquiry into that deeper place where, I wasn't sure how to get to, but I think life took me there to enable me. It became an enabler for me to get there. I mean, I don't know about you, Robbie. How have you found, where there's moments where, they're so challenging with the client, but that actually they just want to be heard. They don't want a solution necessarily. They just want to be heard, and for their experience, no matter how uncomfortable it might be, to be acknowledged.
Yeah. And is this right? It sounds like what you might be saying is that experience, hard as it was around that time particularly, helps you, enabled you or to grow or to be different, so that you could really be with people in the times when that's what they needed.
Exactly, absolutely. And it was actually so soon after I finished the master's degree, that's when the coaching kind of really sort of took off. And because at the same time, a couple of years later, that's when we were abandoned. That's when I became a lone parent. So I've been a lone parent for over 10 years now, and it just totally went into, I had to start all over again, basically. And I just dedicated most of the work and the business into more of a coaching, mentoring, consulting work. So it kind of evolved, it wasn't purposefully done. It wasn't a stop that and start that. It just sort of transitioned organically and naturally.
Yeah. And, I just think this is I love the way you told that story. And I love the way you're really bringing these difficult things into the story, and because how they just feel a part of you just as much as in the same, it feels the same as the story about your dad. It's just a part of life that brought you here to this moment. I'm curious, like the last decade you said of being a lone parent, how has the kind of work you do supported that, and where has it been difficult?
Wow, that's a very good question. It was challenging to begin with. My work actually helps me. I absolutely love what I do, and I'm so blessed and so grateful that I found a vocation that makes my heart sing. It's what it must be like to be one of these like A-list celebrities, right? Not that I'm a celebrity, not yet.
I think better. I think a lot of A-list celebrities, their hearts don't sing a lot. That's why they, take all kinds of drugs and that kind of thing.
True. No, as I said, I absolutely love what I do, and I do feel blessed every single day that I've managed to find something that enables me to be of service and find that rewarding. And interestingly, Robbie, so many people over the years have said, I want to do what you do. And I said, but why? You're good at doing what you do. They said, because you really love what you do, and I want to do that because I want to love what I do. So that's quite interesting, that how it comes across to people, because I don't go around saying, oh yeah, this is great, It just, I guess it's the way you apply yourself. But the first 5 years were really challenging. We were left in a ridiculously a mountain of debt, and we were completely alone, and bringing up the boys, with a lot of support from my parents and my brother. They were fantastic, but I thought, no, it was like warrior fighting spirit came like that. We can do this. We're a team. We can do this. I think the most challenging thing has been trying to be both mum and dad, you know, but striking that balance, you know, wearing both hats, and also giving them the kind of balanced interdependency, that, you know, that will serve them well. And I think I've done all right, fingers crossed, you know, that they're all doing really, really well. My youngest is 17 and a half. So, you know, that I get told, the feedback I get from a lot of people is that you know, you've done incredible. That's really well. You don't feel like that all the time, because how many times, you know, do you feel, you know, there isn't a single week that goes by where there isn't a moment where you feel like, oh, I'm a rubbish parent, you know? But you know, you do the best you can with what you have, right? So yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but I'm very grateful that, you know, I found what I do, you know, and I'm able to apply it, because that has helped in so many different ways. There's been moments where, you know, my friends have said, if you were coaching a client, what would you tell them? So yeah, so that's good. Yeah. So it gives you perspective, you know. But the funny thing is, your friends and family end up, you know, sort of coaching you when you're going through those moments.
Yeah, it's kind of like you look quite happy about the fact that your friends and family say, if you were coaching someone, what would you say to them?
Yeah.
Like, I get annoyed when people do that. I was like,
Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
I know, I should know better than this. All right. Thanks, Emma. But
It's
but
true. Yeah, you
it's
do. You think, but I just want to just talk about it. And say,
yeah,
yeah,
and also
what
like
would you? What,
you know,
yeah,
we're humans, and so it's
yeah,
like I think it's really easy to
yeah,
forget that, and important that.
yeah,
Like one of my clients was just saying the other day to me, you know, that's one of the things she's really liked, is just getting the sense that
yeah,
he's just this person, right?
yeah,
And that's well,
yeah,
okay, I've got permission now to be a person who sometimes,
yeah.
like you say, like
Absolutely.
I mean, kudos to the people that maybe get through a week even
Yeah,
without children and say, God, I wish I hadn't been like that then.
yeah,
Those people are not me. Like I always
yeah,
have those moments, and I think,
yeah,
you know, I guess what I hear in your story though is just that, yeah, kind of, at least in this moment, just a beautiful kind of respect for the work, self-respect for the work that you've done. Like I hear that from you. It's like, okay, yeah, we you know, I love the warrior and the set. You know, there is something really beautiful about the way you're saying, you know, there's moments in the parenting when I wish I'd, you know, done it slightly differently, but
yeah,
you're saying that with a
yeah,
smile and a
yeah.
sense of calm, and that's really nice to see.
Oh, thank you, Robbie. No, you know, I'm not perfect. I would love to be perfect,
It'd be lovely, wouldn't
whatever
it?
that is, but I'm not. And that's the other thing I learned when I did the masters at Ashridge, that I didn't realize how much of a be perfect I had been,
Mm.
and how to turn the dial down, and so that there's a better balance. So that the be perfect and please others can be quite a challenge, you know.
And are there ways, like, I don't know if this is easy, but because it's a complex thing, but are there ways that you've learned to deal with, just for some people, the way that the perfection thing shows up is lots and lots of thoughts about from the, you know, whatever we call it, the inner critic, or the like, it's not
Yeah,
enough, or whatever that thing is. Have you
yeah.
found ways that have helped you to particular things that have helped you to kind of work with that, either particularly maybe with your client, like if you're, I don't know if or when you get it with clients, or when you're delivering things, or it
Yeah.
might also be just in life generally. What's been really helpful for you?
But that, no, that has actually been really helpful, you know, because having to learn to, you know, manage that at times, particularly when you're under stress, and when, you know, when the things dominate, you know, then being aware of that, thing, oh, hold on a minute, that's been really, really helpful, because it informs, you know, what might be going on for the client, you know, or when things are not serving a particular client very well, you know, it's helping the client to get out of their own way. You know, how many times do we actually get in our own way, and we expect, you know, our environmental people, or things around us, you know, to kind of, you know, take care of it for us. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. It's our responsibility to take care of it. And that's hard because sometimes we just want somebody to come along and take care of it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so true. Carla, it's lovely that you've got this sense, and that I love that people just get that from you, that you love your work.
Yeah.
Just could you, like, what does your work look like now? I mean, I know it's maybe like let COVID out for
Yeah.
now, like, because I'm sure
Yeah.
it looks like you said it's similar but different. But
Yeah.
how pre-COVID, or when things return to normal,
Yeah.
what's the work? What parts? How does your work look? Is it lots of one-on-one work and lots of organizational, like all that kind of thing? And also, yeah, which are the bits that you love as part of that too?
Wow. Yeah. It's interesting how where the last couple of years have taken me. Because in 2015, I did a summer school in Cambridge, at Cambridge University, and it was amazing. I did a 3-week diploma that, I know I'm crazy. I like to do these intensive things because it's the only time I can actually take the time out of work and family to do these things. And it was brilliant. Really enjoyed it. It was an advanced design course for organization consulting. And 48 hours after I came back, I became quite seriously ill and was admitted to hospital and had to have emergency surgery. Thankfully, they removed something that was benign, but they said it's going to take you a couple of years, 18 to 24 months to recover. And I was like, you are kidding me. I'm a lone parent. I've got to deliver a workshop in 10 weeks time in London, which I have really, fought for and won. So I'm not giving that up for anyone. And they said, well, you're fairly fit and healthy. You might be able to do it in a year. And I thought, I'm not buying that. So I thought, what I'm going to do is to pay attention to my energy, because I think perhaps I'd lost sight of being aware of how I am with myself, taking care of me, basically, for want of a better way of putting it. So my family, my brother was saying, does that mean you're going to sleep more? Because I had an appalling relationship with sleep. There's just so much to do. I love being busy, not for the sake of being busy, but there's just always so much to do. Again, being a lone parent and running a business, there aren't enough hours in the day. So I thought, well, if Margaret Thatcher can get away with 4 or 5 hours sleep, then I can do it too. So I didn't realize that's what it was always like. So I said to them, I'm just going to understand how my energy works. And my brother said, does that mean you're going to sleep more? I said, no, it's not about sleeping. It's about understanding, how can I boost my immune system and take care of how I apply myself. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to recover. I actually did recover within 7 weeks and did deliver that assignment in London at 10 weeks later. My client knew all about it and she said, are you sure? I said, yeah, I'll be fine. And that client is still with me. So I must have done a relatively good job, thankfully. But it was brilliant. I'm so glad I did it. But what I learned was fascinating about the balance. It helped me to completely reconfigure my relationship with sleep and everything else, music and language and environment and daylight, and just the list goes on and on and on. And I was weaving it into my work. I didn't really realize that I'd always attended to that in my profession. So often I'd inquire about, well, what is it that takes up most of your time and energy? What is it that's actually draining it? So I used to ask those kind of inquiry questions in my coaching anyway. So to take it to another level, because of the research I did, was attracting a bit of attention, and people were saying, oh, can you come and do a masterclass on this? Can you come and do a workshop? So I was doing that. And then I was asked the question, oh, have you got a book on it? Is there anything that you can share? Have you got a handout or something? And I said, well, I'm still researching it. And the more I got nagged and asked about it, the more I thought, okay, maybe I'll start compiling all my research and put it into a book. And I have a very, very good friend, a professor, who, you know, he's comes from a scientific background. So we're having conversations with him as well. And I said, people are saying this, and he said, you should definitely do it, definitely write the book. And I said, okay, if I do it, will you help me? Will you read what I've written? Because I don't want it to be woo woo. You know, I want it to be very real and apply to everybody. He said, I absolutely. He said, I wouldn't have anything to do with it if it was woo woo. I thought, all right, okay, fair enough. So he became my proofreader, and supported me through putting it together in that respect. So yeah, that works. You know, and helped me to keep it real. And he said, you've actually really got something here. This is something that will help so many people. And then I kind of just 98 iterations later, I still didn't want to put it out there. And it was my youngest son who said, Mum, this stuff really works. You have got to get it out there. And so I pressed the publish button, and then I hid for a couple of months because I felt so exposed, because everything there was just so, you know, personal and real. And I did have permission from the client case studies that I used as well. So that was all good. And a lot of support from people, particularly those people who had read the manuscript. Everybody that had participated in the book had read the manuscript as well and said, yeah, this is good to go. But I was still petrified that I thought, oh, if this is not well received, I've done it now. You can't take it back. Once it's out there in the big wide world, it's out there.
Yeah.
So I felt very, very exposed. And then the reviews started to come through, and they're all 5-star reviews. And I thought, oh, okay, I can breathe now. And so I've actually, over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, I've been given work through it, speaking gigs from it. I've spoken at company conferences, at universities, to MBA students, and at colleges for up to upper and lower sixth form. So it's quite interesting where this is actually taken me. So not only do I weave it into my work, the one-to-one sessions, but also in team. You know, people said, can you come and coach the team? Because I want this team to actually understand, you know, how their energy is an asset, not in the organization and in their teams and with their subordinates. So it's kind of snowballed really in a way that I never expected and never thought it would. So yeah, really quite interesting.
So many things I want to ask Kala. Like the thing that fascinates me probably about human psychology in there is this moment of pressing the button and then what followed. And so it sounds like, is this right? It was the kind of, sometimes it is the nudge from the unexpected person that does the same with me, albeit I haven't published a book, but I want to ask about that in a sec. It's like the nudge from the right person, and you're like, oh yeah, this is what I'm like anyway. I'm like, oh yeah, they're right. I have to do this now, don't I?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Was it that? Like, how did you get to the point of pressing the button? And then how did you manage? And what are your reflections on this real vulnerability of it being out in the world and this big step that you took?
Oh wow, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had quite a few different nudges. Well, first nudge is when I was ill, so that was the catalyst that actually then, you know, metamorphosized in this work and this research and the book. And the more I researched the stuff around it, was, you know, the more I uncovered. I thought, oh my gosh. And then I started, the research also included speaking with people, and I learned so much about the fact that actually, you know, I love daylight, for example. I don't really mind what the weather's doing so long as it's bright and there's daylight. So I'm not happy being in a room where there's no daylight, you know, for more than a few hours. So I will always pick working in a room which actually has natural light, wherever possible, because that will get the best out of me. But I learned so much that there are people there, that night owls, who are more energized, you know, in the dark. And then you've got the early birds who are at their best, you know, at the crack of dawn. And I'm diurnal. So that's the daytime person. So all these things, and even how it's different. So how you power down, for example, it's not just about sleeping and meditating. There's so many different ways of powering down. Some people iron. I hate ironing. Sorry. Don't like it.
It's okay. You could admit that to me and anyone who's listening. I think we'll still be interested in what you've got to say. Many of us might be able to identify with that hatred.
Exactly. But there are some people that absolutely love it. They find it really therapeutic. They'll put a movie on or podcast or music or whatever, and away they go. And other people find cooking a form of meditation. I love walking. I absolutely love walking. And to a point that I don't really care what the weather is, so long as, you just dress for the occasion. But I love going for walks out there, in the fresh air, amongst the trees, the birds, and all of that. And during these pandemic times, what I have uncovered and discovered is the most beautiful walks just around me. I've walked so much more this year than I've ever done before, from where I live, and explored places that I would never have known about, because you don't see these places when you're in a car. So that's been a huge, tick in the box for me, and hearing the birds sing and just appreciating, the world around you. And just how colourful it is, the blueness of the sky and the different shades of green in the trees and the wildlife. So that's just been absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like one of the things is, which it really comes out from the story, is in those 7 weeks, and then since then you really understand what you need. And that's just a thing that, I can imagine why there are people saying, can you come and talk to my team about this? Because we can sometimes see it with people, perhaps even with others better than us, when people just why aren't they managing their energy in a way that's healthier for them? And sometimes it's just they don't understand. And so I can really imagine, again, people seeing you, hearing some of this story, and then of course they were going to say, come and speak to my team, or come and speak to these sixth formers.
Well, it does make such a difference, Robbie. Your energy speaks louder than your words. It affects, the way we make decisions, the way we think, the way we respond, the way we love, the way we relate, even the way we cry. So it affects whether you're rejoicing or whether you're doing something else. The energy is it an asset or a liability? Where is that? For people, and it doesn't matter where you're from. It's a universal language, and it doesn't matter how old you are, what race or religion you are, what gender. It affects us all.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I had a nice insight last year. We were talking just off air, like one of the ways that I came across coaching was through an interview series called Waking Up the Workplace. And I went back to an interview on that thing last year, because I was delivering a well-being workshop. And I wanted to listen to an interview with a guy called Tony Schwartz, whose company is called The Energy Project. And I hadn't realized until I went back to this interview how influential that had been on me, and how much since then I had worked to protect, charge, look at my energy, and just what a difference it had made. And it was only going back to that that I was able to really see, wow, I really took this seriously and did this stuff, not necessarily all at once, but gradually, and just realizing what a difference that is. So I fully agree, really. And we see it from people, and I'm sure that's part of what people have always been saying to you about loving your work, is there's an energy that comes off you that shows that. And we know all those stories about first impressions, and as people walk into a room, presence is energy, people's communication comes from their energy, all those things.
Absolutely. And the other thing, Robbie, I've found is a bit like, when you say you first buy a particular car, and then when you go outside, you all of a sudden notice all the other cars similar to yours, or you have a particular jacket, and all of a sudden you see other people wearing that thing. So what I've noticed, particularly more recently, is how much energy is actually mentioned in all sorts of different places, and in lots of books. And one of the books I read last Christmas, which was actually given to me as a gift, The Biology of Belief, absolutely amazing. And I was reading it with a smile on my face because I thought that's exactly it. That's exactly what I'm trying to talk about. And it was fantastic that this medical professional, this guy who was saying things in that book and trying to do the myth busting elements that I was referring to as well. That you can by being more aware of yourself, you can actually heal yourself. But also, how you show up is impacted by where your energy is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Carla, I want to ask a really selfish question now, which is just for me. It might be useful for other people. So I was really curious. I've been working on, people who know my work well will probably know that I've been working on 2 different books over the last couple of years. And I'm now getting to the stage for various reasons where I'm exploring the world of publishing in all its different things. And it's fascinating. And we could do a whole like 90-minute conversation about what I've learned about that. Like, absolutely fascinating.
You'll have to join my masterclass. I'm designing a masterclass for January about how to write a book.
Nice. Cool. Well, I'd love to. As a preview for that, can you tell me like how you published your book, what your experience of that was, and what you learned from it?
Sure. Yeah. That was very interesting, that journey. So I had a couple of interviews, 4 or 5 different publishing companies I spoke with, 2 of which wanted to take the work on. And I thought, oh, great. So you get, all excited about this, and you have a conversation. And I signed up with one because they said, well, there's lots of different options. We can either publish it, or we could do a hybrid where, we publish it, but you're self-publishing as well, or you could do it solo, but we recommend doing it the hybrid way, because it can be quite expensive to publish a book. So I thought, oh, okay, I'll look into that. Also, I'm very lucky. I've got quite a few friends that are published authors as well. So I asked them, so what would you recommend? And so a couple of them recommended the 2 people that I then ended up shortlisting. But they also said, cautionary note, you should consider doing this yourself. Both of them said you should consider doing this yourself, and not the publishers, the friends. And I said, oh, okay, why? They said, well, you have a lot more freedom. But if you want it just done for you, then go through the publishing company. So I thought, I've never done this before. I don't know what I'm doing. I'll let them do it. So I did. But what I found out is that actually you have to do everything yourself anyway. So, you still have to market it yourself. But the only thing you don't have is the rights over, where it goes. So the publisher, not the editor, not the writer, but the publisher has overall rights. Did you find that too?
So like basically what happened for me recently was that I had pretty much only sent these 2 books to one publisher, because I just done a kind of, what would you call it? Like not 80-20, but like 1% 99% analysis on the publishing world, and thought, actually this publisher, if they want to do it, that's perfect for me. Until I got their contract essentially, and realized what it actually, so they actually did make me an offer, which was amazing. And I had this 48 hours where I felt like a different person. And then I gradually absorbed what it actually meant. And I spoke, and I had a bunch of really quick conversations with people with different experiences, again, a bit like your friends who said different things, but it's a serious, especially like, so I think there's a really interesting, so a couple of things that really helped me is my brother-in-law last Christmas, I think, gave me a great self-publishing book. So I was really lucky that I'd already read that. Written by this person who was a real enthusiast for self-publishing. And I'd never really heard those arguments put as well as this writer had. This guy called, I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put links to everything in the under the episode that we've talked about. But I think he's called David Gaughan, and I'll dig out the book. And I read his book anyway, and Irish guy. And he, anyway, so I'd been empowered by that basically already. So I kind of knew that was an option. And one of the places I got to was kind of exactly like you've just said. It's like, it's actually, if you're not a kind of entrepreneur of some kind, it would be terrifying to publish a book. If you are, and you have other sources of income, which the book will help with, and all this kind of thing, it's really not obvious what the best thing to do is. And keeping the control and the freedom
Yes.
is, for me, given that freedom is like a high value of mine, is very attractive.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like what's been interesting since then, and it just
Yeah.
opens your eyes about the publishing world, really. You
Yes,
know,
it does.
my brother's take was that we may be like living in, you know, it's kind of thing Seth Godin would say, that we're living in the kind of, the industry is changing.
It
And
is.
not all of it has caught up with the world, and also neither have readers, and neither have we. So my
Yes.
thing was, there's a massive, in my mind, there's this massive cachet of getting published by a publisher.
Yes.
Now, when I really sat with it, it's like I'm not willing to let my kind of weird bias about that make my decisions for me. So we're in this interesting place. But yeah, I, a bit like you, had a load of conversations where I gradually started to learn, including one with a friend who's been published by one of the big publishers, who, you know, explained that she'd also hired a publicist for her book launch because the publisher doesn't really do anything. And it's like, well, if they're not even doing that, like, why am I selling my work to them forever? You know, so that's where that's where I've got to kind of live for me at the moment. Like you can tell, I'm still thinking it through. I'm still working out what to do, because I think there are really good arguments for, there are good arguments for all the options. But I guess it's including those hybrid things. And one of my friends who used to work in publishing was saying one of the interesting things about it, because she'd done some research on it recently for some work she was doing, is you know, you can do anything now, anything from having someone publish it to paying someone to publish it and then just keeping all the control yourself, to doing it all yourself, to all kinds of hybrid things in between. So I'm in that place now where I'm like sitting with what I'm going to do with it. But it's why I guess I'm curious to hear your take, but also to hear your, so what did you do in the end, and what are your reflections on that? And I know, for example, and we'll you know, I want to hear a little bit about it before we get to the end of the time. You're working on another book, so it's like, what did you do in the end with The Power of Human Energy, and what are you going to do with the next one?
So what I in the end did with The Power of Human Energy, I had a fantastic conversation with Nielsen's Book Company and the British Library, and the people in the know, basically. And they said, "Well, this is great. This book is really great. Why are you not publishing it yourself?"
Right.
I said, because how would I publish it myself? I didn't even know you could publish it yourself. You know, as in, how would you go about it? And they said, you know, because, I said, why would you do that? They said, because you have full rights then. And then, you know, because you have to market it and everything yourself anyway, but you have full rights of how you then go on to using it. And I thought, oh, okay. So they basically walked me through how I'd go about doing that. So that's what I did. I thought, okay, this way I can then, you know, decide where I want it to be, where I wanted to go, because I wanted it to be available to everyone through all different sources, not just, you know, online, but actually through most good bookshops as well. So that the limitations weren't there, and that's what I did. You know, so you know, I guess I paid twice for it, but you know, it is expensive publishing yourself, and this is why I think people don't do it. But if you've got an entrepreneurial mindset, as you mentioned just a moment ago, I think, and you want that freedom to pick and choose, then actually it's a good way of looking at things. And I'm glad I did, because it's just, as I say, snowballed.
Yeah, and people like I was again just saying off air, there's a beautiful, like you were saying, you wanted the book to be not woo woo, right? And there was this great review near the top on Amazon at the moment for the Power of Human Energy, where someone says, someone recommended this to me, and I was like, I'm not reading this, it sounds too hippie or whatever. And then he sits down and he starts reading, I think it's a guy, and he starts reading it, and just finds out how that it does, of course, have that rigorous thing. And clearly, like you say, there's loads of amazing reviews online that people can read, and loads of lovely I don't know, we call them like testimonials about the book from different people on it. Clearly it struck a chord, and
I'm just so grateful. I mean, my first review was from my son, my younger one,
the one who made you publish it.
The one who made me publish it. So
he owed you that, didn't he? Yeah,
he did. And I said, oh, okay, as a Mother's Day present to you guys, I will publish it, because all of them were nagging me, saying, Mum, we really got to get this out there. This is because they had read it, they'd read the manuscript and they liked it, and I thought, but you're a teenager and you like it? I said, yeah, it's really good. I thought, okay, All right, fair enough. And I had lots of lovely surprises. I mean, I'm so blessed and so grateful for the 5-star reviews that are coming through. And thank you, everyone. And long may they continue. But the emails that I've received from readers, that's been incredibly humbling. I had one lady that contacted me, that emailed me, that said, my mum bought me this book for Christmas. She suffers from ME and Emmy, and she hasn't been able to do very much. But she said, I've actually taken up a hobby for the first time in 9 years, and it has really given me, a new lease of energy, and I'm able to read. I'm able to do, other things that she listed in her email. And she said, I just want to say thank you so much for actually taking the time to write this book, because it has actually changed my life. And thank you to my mum for getting it for me. And I was crying when I read the email. I thought, oh wow, because you can't buy these things, can you? When they happen, it's just like so moving. And the other couple of messages I had was, there was one chap who is severely dyslexic. Or for two different people who sent me, both of them dyslexic, and they said, love reading, but can't normally pick up a book and read it, but your book is not only well written, but he said, I can actually pick up a book and read it, because he said it's not monochrome, it's beautifully spaced out, it's a nice font, and you've got pictures in it, and I carry it around with me and use it as a workbook, which was again really lovely. So I hadn't planned for those things, they just, they're bonuses.
Yeah, so, but it's also the part of that beautiful thing. I was talking to another guest about this, and I can't remember who it was, but it's like your work is you're doing work, right? For all we know, right now, someone is sitting there, maybe one of those people, maybe somebody different, reading the book, and that work is out in the world now, and that's the cost is feeling exposed. The benefit is like it's doing work that you as a single human with one life couldn't otherwise do, and touching lives that couldn't otherwise touch.
Well, when I wrote it, I just thought, if it helps one person just to have a better quality of life, if it helps, that would be great. But if that it's helping lots more than one person, and it's not perfect. It's not the be all and end all for everyone, and it's very, very simple. I haven't padded it out. And for some people, it's stuff they already know. It's not new. It's not rocket science. I haven't invented anything. I've just put it together to offer a level of awareness that it helps us all understand how unique it is for us all. Because, for example, Robbie, how you power down, power up, and power through will be completely different the way Emma does.
Definitely. She's absolutely a cooking person. Like, it's really interesting to watch her doing that as her way of energizing herself, which is not me at all. Kala, we've got like a little while left. There's a couple of things I want to make sure we catch, just to tie up the publishing conversation, just because I know this might be the kind of thing that people are interested in. So in terms of literally how you self-publish, because for some people that's totally, they've got no idea about that, and I know some things about it, and people can do it through Amazon these days as well. That's one way. What was the way that you chose, and is there are there any recommendations that you would make to people who are interested in that kind of thing, about companies to use or ways to go, that kind of thing?
Well, the recommendations I would make is have conversations with people. Go and speak to people who have published a book, what's been their experience, because no two people's experience will be the same. And so I think I found that appreciative inquiry particularly useful. And also go and speak to those people who can offer you that service as well, so you can make an informed choice, an informed decision, and make a note of, okay, what are the different things offering you, and what do you actually want? How much? Some people don't want to be in control. They just want somebody else to take care of it all, which is absolutely fine.
Right. Absolutely.
So it's actually, I guess, understanding, what exactly do you need? What do you want? And go and have conversations and find, the provider that can give you that, can tick those boxes for you, and it's not forever either. You can change your mind. Well, depending on what contract you sign, of course.
Yeah.
But everything's negotiable, right?
Mm. Yeah, and it sounds like it's a beautiful piece of advice to find out really what you want and what you need by having the conversations. I think that's a really nice kind of frame to bring.
Well, the colorism, people say this is a colorism that will live with me forever. One of the things that people have heard me say throughout all my life is everything's worth a conversation.
Nice. Everything's worth a conversation. That's really good. Yeah, that should meme. You can put that on a nice meme on Facebook or something. Yeah, really nice. Kala, I've also got in my mind, like, the unsneezed sneeze of this conversation is that I said I wanted to hear you talking a bit more about team coaching.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a long time ago now. It's a bit to crowbar it back in before we just get a little bit onto what you've got like coming up next in the future and that kind of thing. Yeah. I guess one of the things that I think people sometimes struggle with is how would you define team coaching? Like, you used that phrase, and do you differentiate it from group coaching? And like, just as that kind of mechanical piece, when you're coaching a team, how similar is that to your one-on-one work? How does it look? Those kind of pieces, really.
Well, team coaching, in my experience, I can only speak from my experience, of course, because different people have their own sort of styles. Team coaching for me is different to group coaching, and that's also different to one-to-one coaching. You contract in a slightly different way.
Yeah. What are the key differences, particularly between team and group coaching, maybe? Because I think most people will have a sense of the one-on-one stuff, but with
team coaching, you normally, or my style of working is, you normally will have spoken to each individual before the actual team coaching session, and they will have known, typically they work together or they know each other. Group coaching, often they don't know each other necessarily, because group coaching is a bit like how we were group coached at the Robert Holden thing, for example.
Yeah, he was an expert at doing 100 of us at once.
Exactly. So that to me is group coaching, where you've got you're a room full of people that they don't necessarily know each other, and if they do, that's just a coincidence. Whereas team coaching is typically people who work together and do know each other.
And what's the kind of, to give people that haven't been involved in that before an idea, like, for you in your work, what's the kind of reason you're brought in? I mean, maybe it's energy might be a good example. It might be the one that's useful, but can you give an example of the kind of a team coaching engagement you might do? Like, you come in, you have some conversations with everyone, you maybe then, it sounds like, speaks the team together. Like, how might that look, and what's the kind of engagement that you might work on?
With this, it ranges depending on what the sponsor wants to achieve. Typically, it's dynamics, understanding dynamics, helping the team to co-create, what's their level of engagement on a particular task or subject or a goal, a team goal or company goal. Understanding each other, understanding rights, roles and responsibilities, and the rights that go with those roles and responsibilities. That's very popular. Do that quite a lot. And team dynamics, again, very popular. Team observation, how to turn a functioning team into a high performing team, and what is the definition of team success, because success is not a solo sport, it is a team sport. And helping people to look at, okay, well, how does that show up for them? And team mapping as well, so understanding and respecting different resources and the strengths and the skills that exist in a team, and how does that come together, for the purpose of the outcome, for the organization or the goal or the task or the project or whatever it is they're working on. So it's, having done this for, like, as I say, 2 decades, no two teams are the same. Team development is so much fun, really so much fun, because you can have themes and simulate different scenarios. And one of my mottos, one of my styles is create an event where people can come along and have some fun. Because when people are having fun, they learn more and they remember more.
Mm.
You know, I don't want to come along for them to feel like it's work, because they do that every day. So wherever possible, to give them that space to really, develop themselves and develop with each other.
No, I think that fun thing is such a great thing, and for people, like, it's easy to dismiss that, but I think that the science is getting clearer and clearer that fun basically shifts us into the neurobiological states which enable us to learn, and if we're not, like, if we're laughing, we're almost certainly in a learning state, and if so that's I think that's
exactly
that's spot on.
I mean, for me, two big things that I certainly pay a lot of attention to is how you manage the energy throughout the whole session, as well as the fun bit. So those two things, for me, I think are pretty significant ingredients for a successful, memorable, and useful session outcome.
Yeah, look, thanks for jumping back to that thing, but I just think, because it's it's like, especially when people are starting out into the world of coaching, all these different words, types of coaching often go sort of semi-unexplained, and of course it's your definition and all that kind of thing, and I think that it's a really useful distinctions that you've just made, and really, really nice to hear about how you work. So
thank you,
Kala, believe it or not, we've come to this, flown by for me, we've come to the end of this conversation nearly. Just before we go, like, the book is, The Power of Human Energy is one way for people to find out more about your work. What else is coming up for you? What are you excited about at the moment? And is there any are there any last things that you want to kind of share about that you think people who are listening might want to know or might appreciate?
Well, looking into next year now, because the calendar for this year is crazy. It's pretty hectic. So I'm looking into next year with regards to putting some masterclasses out there, some sessions on different things. So look out for that. I'll probably put it on LinkedIn.
I was just going to say, so that including the writing one that people might be interested in, is that LinkedIn is a good place to find you?
LinkedIn and my website is a good place to find me.
And we'll have links to those in the
or email me. People do email me, and that works too. So do feel free to reach out and email, and I can give you the dates of when we're actually planning these peppered throughout next year. So that's happening. But also, I'm currently working on my next book, which is taking a lot longer than I thought, because it's so busy, it's so hectic work-wise, and so I don't particularly want to take my foot off the gas with work to focus on the book. So wherever I get pockets of time, and it's a creative experience as well. You kind of have to be in that space. For me, when I'm writing or painting, you just have to be in that zone. So that's the working title for that is The Power of Human Connection. And at the moment that is massive and is already snowballing. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, how interesting. Well, definitely come back for another conversation when that's done, if not before, because I think human connection, given everything we spoke about coronavirus and Zoom and all these things, but so many other parts of the world and the way it's changed in swift ways in the last couple of decades. So much of that is around connection and its power and what's lost when it's not there and all those things. So I'm glad that you're working on that book, and I look forward to speaking to you about it another time. But otherwise, thanks so much for everything in this conversation. There's been so much for people to take away, and just appreciating your all the wisdom and experience you've brought. So thanks so much, Kala.
You're welcome. Thank you, Robbie. It's been great to be here, and I can't believe how quickly that's flown by.
And like I said, we'll put links to everything for anyone who's listening in wherever they're listening to this, wherever you're listening to this. But other than that, Kala, thanks so much, and until next time.
Thank you, Robbie. Till next time. See you again.